Everything you think you know about why people join cults is wrong. Contrary to popular belief, the uncomfortable truth is that intelligence can actually make someone more vulnerable to becoming a cult member, not less. Everybody assumes cult members are stupid, gullible, or uneducated, but that couldn't be further from the truth. The self help cult Nexium had lawyers, MBAs, actresses, and even a billionaire heiress bankrolling the operation. Heaven's Gate ran a successful web design company. Om Shinriko recruited physicists and doctors from Japan's top universities who were smart enough to manufacture sarin, but were still somehow convinced their leader could levitate. A 2017 study of former cult members found that 61% had more than 12 years of education. And research consistently shows that members come from middle-class backgrounds with no prior psychological illnesses. The truth is that we are all biologically wired for social connection. That's just a fact of life, and unfortunately, it's one that high control groups exploit. And let's make one thing really clear right out the gate. People don't really join cults. Cults recruit people. So the better question is, why doesn't intelligence protect you from being recruitable? Quick story, because it's very relevant to this video based on my own personal experience. So a few years ago, I'm in a grocery store, just minding my own business, and a woman about my age stops me to say she loves my outfit. And I'm like, aw, how sweet. I say, thanks, and then we start chatting, and I'm thinking, wow, what a nice little spontaneous human moment. And then the conversation keeps going and going and going. She's asking all these questions about my life, and I'm just answering. She mentions she's being mentored by a successful couple. Cool. Weird. Sure. Then she asked for my phone number, and against my better judgment, I gave it to her. Like my real one. I know, rookie mistake. I was just trying to get her to go away. So she texts me and calls me for a couple days before I finally block her. And I only clocked this later when I was reading a book. It's called Combating Cult Mind Control by Stephen Hassan. He's a guy who spent years as a high-ranking member of the Moonies cult before he got out and became one of the world's leading cult experts. So that nice spontaneous moment I had at the grocery store, turns out it wasn't all that spontaneous. That was step one of the recruitment playbook. And it turns out that that girl was from the notorious MLM, Amway. Believe it or not, it's not the first time I've been targeted by an MLM. And I'm not saying I was recruited because I'm smart or anything. Like, she wouldn't have any idea about that. But it's the perfect example of these cult recruitment tactics. Part of the process is finding out as much as they can about you and making you feel special. It's like love bombing and profiling all wrapped up into one. It's a good example, too, that they don't lead with the weird doctrine stuff or the financial commitments. You know, that comes later after you've already started spending time with the other cult members and forming relationships with them. Hassan says cults deliberately seek out intelligent, talented, and successful people. Not despite those things, but because of it. I mean, smart members are more likely to bring money, credibility, and skills to run the organization. Remember, cults need to make money. For example, if you didn't know, the group 3HO, which was founded by cult leader Yogi Bhajan, owns the tea company Yogi Tea, like the yellow boxes of Yogi Tea that are on every grocery store in America. Hassan said the Moonies categorize people into 4 groups: thinkers, feelers, believers, and doers. If a person was categorized as a thinker, they'd use an intellectual approach. Also, and I feel like this is important, cult recruiters lie. They lie, they just do. That's part of what makes the recruitment process a form of coercive persuasion. The Moonies would deliberately misrepresent their organization with photos of their leader with Nobel laureates, philosophers, and scientists, and made it seem like those people were supporters of the movement. But Hassan says, in fact, that none of them actually supported the Moonies. They just happened to have mutual acquaintances and were paid a ton of money to attend the events where they'd then be photographed, and then those photographs would be used for recruitment. The group Nexium literally marketed itself as a program for high achievers. And that branding actually does a big part of the heavy lifting because automatically they're attracting people who self-identified into that group as high achievers. It's kind of brilliant if it wasn't so sadistic. Honestly, recruiting might not even be the right word. It's a lot more like headhunting. And it's probably worth mentioning that recruitment isn't a one and done deal. It's a process. It starts with maybe a workshop or a seminar or a personality test, and then it's a weekend retreat, and then a 7-day retreat, and then a 21-day retreat. And then before you know it, you are moving into the commune with the other cult members. Oftentimes, cults will also incorporate a sort of confession aspect to the recruitment process, where they extract all of your deepest, darkest secrets and fears and desires, and then feed them right back to you or find a way to use them against you. And okay, I know what you're thinking. You're like, okay, so what, Maddie? Even if they're targeting smart people, even if they're lying about it, shouldn't a smart person be able to see through all of that? No, wrong. And let me tell you why. The skills and abilities that make someone smart are not necessarily the same as those that make someone rational. Turns out there's actually a word for this: disrationalia. Basically, it just means that being smart and being rational are two different skills. You could have a super high IQ and still have poor real-world decision-making skills. It's kind of like a book smart versus street smart sort of deal. Psychologist Keith Stanovich coined this term in the 90s. And in that same study that the disrationalia finding came from, came another finding about a bias called the my side bias, which is just what it sounds like. It means that we favor evidence for what we already believe. We all do it, but since IQ and rationalization are two different skills, smarter people don't necessarily correct their bad beliefs or their false beliefs faster. They just build better, more elegant defenses for them. For example, in some cults, they can say, you just don't understand because you're not evolved enough yet. You need to spend more time with the leader. Buy these books to understand more. Listen to this seminar. Confess more, and every single doubt becomes proof that you need to go deeper. The smarter you are, the better you'll defend that logic to yourself. It's very, very sneaky, very manipulative. So even if you have a high IQ, it doesn't mean you're rational, and you're still susceptible to the my side bias. And then listen to this. This is just kind of funny. In a survey of the Canadian Mensa Club, weird name, but it is just an invite-only club for people who score in the top 2% of intelligence on IQ tests. It found that 44% believed in astrology. So, point in case, having a high IQ doesn't mean you're equally as rational. And there's one more very important piece of the cult recruitment puzzle. According to a survey from Hassan of former cult members, the majority of recruits were approached at a vulnerable or stressful time in their lives. I'm talking breakups, big move, getting laid off, going through a period of grief, that kind of thing. Being intelligent doesn't spare anyone from the emotional roller coaster of what it means to be human. This author from the 1950s, Eric Hoffer, he wrote this book called The True Believer about mass movements, where he basically says, when you're happy, you're not really interested in change, but when you're unhappy, that's when you're most likely to change. Obviously, cult recruiters can easily take advantage of this. They can catch a smart person during a rough patch and offer them what every human being needs: a sense of belonging, meaning, and purpose. So the truth is that it's a myth that only dumb people join cults. Cults are a perversion of a very normal, biologically wired function of being human. And it doesn't matter what your IQ is, because everyone has emotional needs that can make them vulnerable to cult recruitment. The only real protection isn't being smart, it's being humble enough to believe you're recruitable. So if you think you're too smart to join a cult, think again.